funny?
That's funny. Good morning. I want to welcome you to the October 16th, 2018 monthly work session. Our agenda today consists of the beginning action plans for elementary schools, and we have our Executive Director for Elementary Schools here, Mr. Chris Renoff, and Kelly Ellington to discuss those plans.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's great to be here. With me today are Kelly Ellington, Director of Elementary Curriculum, Amy Beachy sitting to my left. She is one of our iReady and intervention specialists. And we have 6 principals with us today. We have Jennifer Dolciato, Becky Drum, Susan Nations, John Wida, Edwina Oliver, and Stephen Royce. First of all, I just want to start off by saying we appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And I say opportunity because I really believe that that's what we were provided. When the 2018 FSA results came out back in June, we were presented with an opportunity to reflect, refocus, and refine our efforts, our energy, and our support to schools, teachers, and students. And given that we've been allocated 90 minutes, which sounds like a long time, with 7 individual presentations, it's going to go very quick.
It is a long time.
So we aim to honor everybody's time, especially yours, but also that of our principals, because we really want you to hear what they have to say. So with that, we've put a little pad of sticky notes at your place setting, and please know there are many sticky notes, so you're not limited, but we would just encourage you to go ahead and jot any questions you might have, because we do believe that during, but especially at the end, there will be ample time for us to address and field any questions that you might have. And so with that, the format and focus and flow of today's presentation will be as follows. First, you'll hear from Kelly and myself providing a brief overview of the data. I commonly refer to that as what happened. Next, we're very, very excited to be sharing the district action plan response to the data, what I call, what are we doing about it? And then you're going to hear from the principals of 6 of our schools that received a C grade from the state of Florida in June. And they're going to be providing detailed highlights related to each of their schools, specifically areas of increases or decreases in relation to the 2018 FSA data, some of the contributing factors or impacts that led us here today, and then they're going to share action steps pertinent to their school and their action plan for this school year. So, what did we notice? After reviewing and dissecting the 2018 FSA data and school grade elements, we noted the following broad patterns. On the plus side, we saw increases in science. Increases in science make us very, very happy. That is starting to materialize for a couple of reasons. One, an increased and deliberate focus on science, looking at the alignment to the standards and the exposure to the level of rigor that our students are going to be expected to respond to, ownership of science education K through 5 in all of our buildings. It's not just up to our 5th grade teachers to make sure that kids are learning science. And last but certainly not least, for the first time in a long time or maybe ever, we have a full-time person dedicated to elementary K through 5 science, and that's Miss Sherry Dame. She joined our team in about January and immediately went to work in schools and with our principals, assistant principals, and teachers, and has already had an immediate impact. So we look forward to seeing that continued growth in science. In math, you definitely see, and we expected to see, increases in math across the board because we've had a 3-year deliberate focus on maintaining math mentality. And that's thanks to the generosity of the Charles and Marjorie Brancic Foundation. That is a grant that we received 3 years ago. It continues again this year. And I can tell you right now, Sue D'Angelo and Alicia Charbonneau, our mathematics instructional specialists, they have literally transformed our thinking, approach, but probably even more than that, our confidence in the way that we approach mathematics. When you look on the delta side, across the board, we kind of look and we see it's an obvious pattern. We see decreases in English language arts, especially in learning gains in the lowest quartile. And as you peel back the layers and really start to dig deep in the data, we see that there's a Tier 1 instructional concern in English reading and language arts, which translates to a focus on the elements of what does an effective literacy block look like, feel like, planning with a purpose, alignment to the standards, and again, making sure that our students are being exposed to the level of rigor that they are going to have to respond to on the assessment. So, what are we doing about it? As a district elementary curriculum team, we're working in concert. And I say that because that's very important. It's not a us versus them. We are working in concert with all of our schools to maximize the implementation of the following action steps, some of which you are already familiar with. First and foremost, reading recovery is in all of our schools. Those literacy experts are really laying the foundation and building capacity pre-K through second grade and even amongst our volunteers. We've recently created a striving reader plan at the elementary, middle, and high school level, which will provide teachers with a decision tree that will guide them in matching the most appropriate interventions to the needs of their students. In June, we were just notified that we were awarded the Closing the Literacy Gap grant, again, compliments of the Barancic Foundation. And that, under the leadership of Holly Chesnoff, who's our intermediate instructional specialist in ELA, it's already begun providing high-quality professional learning for every third, fourth, and fifth grade teacher of reading in our district. The new dashboards, very familiar with those, produced by Research and Assessment, Denise and her team, have already, these are phenomenal tools that are already helping administrators and teachers alike deepen their understanding of the most effective uses of data to inform, guide, and drive instructional planning and their interventions. We were also, over the summer, given the opportunity to hire 3 additional literacy instructional specialists, specifically to support the 6 schools that are going to be presenting today. So you're going to hear a little bit more about that. It's very exciting. And last, but certainly not least, this is something that we are very, very excited that has come to fruition. We've assembled a tiered or differentiated support plan for all our schools, not just our schools that received a C. And so I've asked Kelly to come and highlight the process of how it was developed and the varied components that are entailed. Kelly.
So in your packet, one of the next slide shows a couple of... Oh, there we go. This next slide here shows a couple of charts, and it was as we were understanding the data as it was coming in over the summer, Mr. Renoff and I first looked at the increases and decreases across the schools and in all the subject areas, reading, math, and science. These 2 charts are for our reading, or for ELA.
Excuse me, the numbers are really kind of small, but do the colors mean something?
Yes, so I was just getting ready to say, yes. So if you look at the chart on the left, the pink and the salmon are where schools decreased. The yellow is where they stayed the same. Green is increases. So if you look at it overall, holistically, there aren't enough green. This brought us some concern because of all the pink and salmon. And I'll just tell you as an aside, the salmon were smaller decreases, and that's why we did it in salmon instead of pink. There was too much pink. So the bottom line is it was alarming to us. It was a concern. We realized we had some more decreases in ELA than expected. The numbers on the left, though, this chart that's pink, yellow, and green, and salmon, those are apples to oranges. Those are this year's 4th graders compared to how they did, compared to next year's 4th graders or so forth. It's a different group of students. So we wanted to look at the data from a different perspective, and that was over time, the same cohort of students. That's what we're seeing on the right. So on the right, it's showing across 3rd graders a couple of years ago, how did they do 2 years ago in 4th grade, and then how did they do last year in 5th grade. The 2 columns on the right that have bold shaded boxes, those shaded boxes show where over time those cohorts of students did increase. But as you can see, not many boxes are shaded bold. So that really just confirmed our area that we need to focus in on ELA. Now, like I said, we did this for math and science as well. There were many more bold shaded boxes for math, and we had more increases in science. So this just helped us determine ELA would be our focus. So we can share more data with you at other times, but today we wanted to show you this, and then we wanted to show you what we did next. We started unpacking this data even further by grade levels, and this was just our work as we were looking at different schools and different grade levels and trying to figure out, because some grade levels at some schools went up, some went down, and it wasn't just by school. So the specialists and Chris and I really worked at unpacking this a little bit more. These are the ELA charts again, and what was coming clear is probably no surprise to anyone, is that 26 elementary schools have varying needs. They don't all need the same thing. And so since we know fair doesn't always mean equal, we just started designing this tiered or differentiated plan of support for our professional learning. And this says all get some and some get all. And what we mean by that is that all of our schools would have an opportunity for and benefit from some professional learning, and then some of our schools would get that and even more. The next slide shows what this would look like. So the all get some. All of our elementary schools are going to have opportunity for these items on the left. Some that include, I won't read them all, but full days of literacy training based on the standards, ongoing support with iReady and training and monitoring the data, science lab instructional rounds, the modules by our reading recovery literacy experts, and so forth. So all of our schools would get the items on the left. Some of our schools would get everything on the left and then some. Additional training on the standards, additional support with iReady and the interventions, and as Chris mentioned, the 3 ELA specialists helping those specific schools. So this was our tiered or differentiated plan to support our schools. All get some get all. So what does this mean specifically? This chart just shows, for example, how the ELA professional learning breaks down. And if you look across the bottom, you can see that every school would get the 2 full days of the literacy training. Every school would get some CPT support and so on. But our 6 schools who are presenting today, we happen to have them listed on the chart. You see how they're going to get even more support from the district level and in working in concert with their teams and their coaches and their teacher leaders at their school, including ongoing coaching, more CPT, an additional day of in-service and literacy, and so forth. So we have these charts for math and science as well, but again, today we were just focusing on the ELA. The other piece that we really strategically looked at was our support for iReady. Now that we have the full staff, we have experts who are able to concentrate and give a comprehensive support for iReady. And so this just lists all the different things we're doing, which include, again, those CPTs, where the specialists are going out to all 6th grade levels at all 26 of the schools and providing support and understanding the data and using the resources in the toolbox to match the instruction to the students in a targeted way. And then finally, we wanted to mention that we have other PD opportunities available for all of the teachers if they want to take it, and it's in a lot of different areas. I already mentioned math and science. There's also the modules that our reading recovery teachers are providing, and our arts integration team, of course, is providing a lot of professional development. So the schools have a lot to choose from. What's really powerful, as Mr. Renoff mentioned already, is that our specialists, our district elementary curriculum specialists, are really working in concert, and they're collaborating together so that we can provide a coherent and cohesive plan for our schools, because again, with all the subjects, most of our teachers teach all the subjects, and so it's a lot to coordinate, but they're working really together to do that, so it's delivered in a cohesive way, and we're working closely with our schools and principals so that we're complementing what they're doing, we're providing the support that they need, and we really believe that this tiered and collaborative approach will help us reach all kids and provide a positive educational experience for them.
On that, I was talking to some teachers, and they were, about all the professional development that we had, and they lamented the fact that, before the way salaries were paid, that if they got professional development, they got plus hours, and that helped to increase their salaries. And the new teachers aren't getting that.
Right,
are we seeing new teachers that have been hired since that went into effect not taking as many training or
Yeah, that's a really good question. It'd be since 2011, that's when that changed. And we'd have to go back and look to find out for sure the statistics, but our trainings are always full, so I would think not, but we could go back and look and really, find that data and find out for sure.
Yeah, but that's something that we might share with our legislators too, but by taking that away, we are sort of discouraging, not discouraging, but we're not encouraging to do the training that how we used to by paying them for getting more training.
Right. And all the teachers have to have a certain amount of hours within their 5-year period, and so
yeah, that's nominal.
Right, it is, and many of them take so much more. some of the tiered support we're offering, like the literacy days and the CPT days to understand iReady, those are subs are being provided and everything. So they're or it's done during their collaborative planning time. So we're able to reach all 840 elementary teachers with that. So we're really happy.
So let's go around the room in an orderly fashion with questions. And this is questions for a general nature for both Chris and Kelly. Caroline, do you have a question or questions?
When we are providing professional development, when are we providing it? Are we providing a lot of subs? Is it days when they should be teaching? Because that's what I'm hearing.
No, that's a great question. I know Kelly can certainly elaborate on it. We're trying to be very strategic and mindful of that because, honestly, most teachers, as Kelly said, want the professional development. They want the support. They want to learn. They're wonderful role models for our kids about lifelong learning. But at the same time, it's harder sometimes. You'll hear them say, it's harder to be out of the classroom. So really, we're trying to be very strategic on how, when we pull them out, whether it's a half day or a full day, by cohort groups, and or doing some of the professional development while they're at their school so that they can have a continuous progress to their student day.
And
We have our professional development days, so while we're utilizing those effectively.
Yeah, go ahead.
On those days, we can expect teachers to attend half of that day in professional development so that they have the other half of the day for their own planning and things like that. But also schools do a lot of professional development on those days. So from a district perspective, we offer some things, but it's harder to make sure we reach all teachers on that day. And the capacity, again, with 840, it's hard to get everybody in that one shot. We're looking at other options when we're trying to work with schools when there are conflicts. So we're offering, would a Saturday work better, or would after hours or during the day? So, and as Chris said, we're being strategic with the during the day ones.
And being
Follow up,
firm.
please.
Yep.
If we do on a Saturday, then do we pay teachers extra?
For the literacy training that we're doing where we have the Bransic funds, providing we would, yeah.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
Good question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our schools also have the ability to do waivers and to take those professional days, particularly the ones at the end of the school year. And so those waivers have become increasingly popular as a vehicle to get access to teachers during the school year. And then we essentially give them that time back during post-planning.
Great question.
Mr. Robinson, do you have questions?
Yeah, I obviously I like the tiered support issue. I think it's going along the right path. But my question had to do with the closing the achievement gap grant that you received.
Yes.
And you said that you're doing it for every third, fourth, and fifth grader.
Every third, fourth, and fifth grade teacher of reading.
Right. So I'm just trying to understand when you're balancing that out with the tiered and differentiational learning. It seemed to me that you would probably not have that do Pineview teachers who teach third, fourth, and fifth grade need to have that for closing the achievement gap versus the six principal schools who are behind you? It would seem that you'd get more bang for your buck if it was. If you, instead of spreading it out amongst everybody, if you concentrated it on the places that would close the achievement gap. Because I got to imagine that the achievement gap at Pineview would be minimal compared to achievement gap at, say, the six classes behind you. So could you give me the thought process on doing the closing achievement gap at all the schools instead of focusing on the schools that would obviously have the best benefit?
Do you want to start?
Sure. So the one slide that showed the chart and it didn't have the other schools listed, that kind of shows our idea there. And the closing the literacy gap grant work that we're doing, the 2 full days we wanted to make available to all those third, fourth, and fifth grade teachers. Now, there are a few schools, like you mentioned, we're giving it as an option to them if they want to participate. So if Pineview teachers said, we really don't want our third, fourth, and fifth to join this first 2 days of training, then that's their call. But we found that they really wanted to because the first couple of days are really about enhancing Tier 1 instruction, enhancing the core instruction, so understanding the elements of the reading block, and also unpacking the standards, which we haven't really done a lot of work on in the district. So they are also learning some ways to ratchet up their instruction.
I'm just saying you could, instead of spending the time, I would say like at Pineview, in those 2 days, have those same people not only do 2 days worth of training at, say, M&E, but then they could come back for those other 2 days and observe to see how they're implementing those training courses they had. I would think that would be a much more effective use of resources, having 2 days of instruction, 2 days observation versus 2 days at
Yeah.
And 2 days, that'd probably be
And-
closing the achievement gap.
True.
All else being equal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Do you agree with that?
I,
It is built in.
It is built in. One thing that we kind of glossed over, but again, we're very excited to mention, was the fact that we hired 3 additional ELA specialists, and they're doing nothing but spending time at the schools that need coaching, mentoring, work with teachers, guiding small groups. So they're getting much more intensive support than any of the other schools. But I hear exactly what you're saying.
Just my 2 cents.
And the days that Pine View is there, for example, it's when they're joining the other team. So it's not like our specialists are being pulled just towards that school. So
Great point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
thank you. So ready.
And if we don't have any other questions, we're going to
No,
go ahead.
I do have
Oh, I'm sorry, Jane. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm so sorry.
And my question generally and is this: are we just doing so very much and just moving from A to B? I mean, we're starting this initiative and then we're starting this, and this might be, a question for you, Kelly, because this is your area. I mean, it makes me tired just thinking about some of these things. I want a good reading program that is phonics-based. I want I want less tests. I want teachers in the classroom more via, not being absent, students not being absent, more mindful, more present. And I want professional development to be around that, not take away from that when at all possible. And I think you're doing a lot of good things, but I just, I don't know what the mix is. I don't know what
Right.
is, and I intend to get more involved with these 6 schools. Believe me, and with some of these new specialists that you've got. But
Phenomenal.
I'm concerned about student achievement, and I mean that's really where it's at for me. And I don't know. I want our scores to be higher, and I know the higher they get, the more difficult it is to rise them and make them high. I mean, I get
No doubt.
that, but I find that I'm worried about these new teachers. I don't know how many of these schools have new teachers, but I'm worried about new teachers being mentored and what support are we giving to them. That's a big one for us because we can't afford to lose any more teachers.
Tension.
Right.
But I just, I really can't tell you. I've gone through the presentation, and the presentations are good, and I think we are climbing in certain ways. But this ELA setback is a big concern.
It absolutely is, and so one, I appreciate your comments, Jane. The other piece I just want to mention is, again, it's about laying that foundation and building capacity, not being distracted by multiple things, multiple initiatives, et cetera, tying them all together, including when all of our specialists are out, whether they're a math specialist, science specialist, ELA specialist, they are all connecting to those common beliefs that we have that make a difference, especially in ELA.
Okay.
Caroline?
I'd also like to know how many days are teachers absent from the schools that we're talking about? I'd like to know what the absentee rate is.
With this plan right now, if all schools and teachers take advantage of the 2 ELA days and then 1 math day that we have scheduled, it would be 3 for the year.
I want to know how many days teachers are not in school, and I want to know how many days and how many teachers attend the trainings.
And when you're talking absent
Just
from school, are you talking absent for professional development or just absent in general?
Absent.
Oh.
That's what I thought. Okay. I don't have that information obviously in front of me, but that's something that we could certainly
No,
look
but
at.
it's something.
Yep. And as far as
Trying to find a way why we're not doing better. Because we're putting so much resources into this area. Why are we not doing better?
and I think you're going to see, as you listen to the principals, I think you're going to see a turn for the positive, especially in ELA, and continue that momentum in math and science as well.
I want to build on that. I think that's a good question that she has, or a good request. I mean, when we're looking at the scores at the end of this year, tell us how many days the teacher was absent, and did the teacher take all the training that was offered, and how did their scores do?
Yeah.
And how many teachers were new?
And how many were new?
Because I am seeing across the district and in other places as well, in other parts of the state, we are not helping these young teachers enough. And I think that's a result. As a result, I think we're losing some people who might be
And I know that that's something that I think all of you have certainly spoken to our human resource department about, and we take that really serious, and so do our principals, because it starts with that relationship and that culture. It really, really does. I mean, when they come in new or coming from a different county, even with experience, we need to make sure that we're hardwiring those expectations and supporting them immediately wherever they are in whatever discipline.
And I think when we talk about kids, we talk about rigor and all the buzzwords we use, I think we can sum up teaching by saying, are they thriving? Are our teachers thriving?
Yeah.
And
That's exactly where I was going to go, Jane. They need to come in and be embraced.
Yeah. And I don't think you're going to hear one person today that doesn't agree wholeheartedly with you on that.
Well, I just want to know why they're leaving.
Yeah.
And if you're embracing them.
And what can we do? That's what can we as a school board do for you? For both of you sitting here.
Well, the additional.
Isn't that what I'm supposed to ask, Laura?
Yeah. Is that the line?
She's been training me.
That's it. I see
very
it.
good. We appreciate that. I can say that the additional team members for our department have been a huge help, because we have, counting the other 3 schools, we have 26, and we have 6th grade levels at 2 of those other schools and 4 grade levels at the one. And to have 5 specialists meet 6th grade levels at 26 schools is nearly impossible. And now we have, so that was a good district response. And the people we have and the way they're working collaboratively as a team, nothing like I've ever seen before. I have very high expectations and high hopes for this team. They are so expert in this, the work that we have to do. And we agree with you what you're saying about the new teachers too, embracing them. We get to meet with them at the beginning of the year and try to continue to provide that support during the year. But you're right,
And as Laura just mentioned and
I
reminded
thought
me.
Dr. Kingsley may want to.
Yep, she may. But again, one of the pieces is they are grant funded, those extra specialists. Those are federal grants. And so, again, we hope that those dollars will always exist so that we can continue to bolster the support to teachers, because that's what they need.
We need more grants, and that's a great leverage. But is there anything you'd like to add?
I just want to hear.
Yep.
Okay.
I am too.
All right.
I'm excited.
I
More
just don't
time at
want
the
to
end.
leave you out.
You got it.
So before we leave this subject, I just want to make sure that we talk about the migration of teachers, because I'll tell you, you're going to talk to 6 of our best elementary school principals, but if you talk to the non-Title I elementary school principals, what they would tell you is, forget Florida and Florida State, that the best teacher preparation program in the state is taking place in our Title I elementary schools. Is that the intensive training that they're doing really puts a premium on those teachers, and so those teachers are moving to non-title schools. Is if you're the principal at Tatum or Lakeview or Southside, you don't want a first-year teacher out of the University of Florida or Florida State who's done an internship. You want a teacher who spent 3 or 4 years at a Title I elementary school. It is the best teacher preparation program anywhere. As a matter of fact, my advice to incoming teachers is you want to be at a Title I school, because that's where we focused our resources. But our system is built that if you take a Lakeview and you take Emma E., we pay the teacher the exact same salary to be at both of those school sites. So what is the incentive to be at Emma E.? And so if you can be at Lakeview for equal dollars, and it's not just a monetary decision. And so we have to make sure that these are attractive positions. I've talked to our teachers of the year. I asked them all to close their eyes, and I said, I want you to raise your hand when you get to a number at which you will allow the superintendent to assign you to a school. And they all said, you mean a Title I? And I said, just any school in which the superintendent can assign you. When we got to $10,000, I said, you got to stop. I don't have that kind of money. And there weren't a lot of hands up in the room. And so the migration of teachers is something that we have to keep an eye on. You can't restrict their rights, because I tell you what, if we don't allow them to move to the Lakeviews of the world, Manatee County will, Charlotte County will. We've got to make these teaching positions attractive, that people want to stay.
Mrs. Brown.
You ask what we can do, and I'm sitting here thinking, well, I know what I can do. And that is, I'm going to volunteer 1 hour a week at Wilkinson. My husband goes into my daughter's class, the kindergarten class, and there's 3 or 4 kids, and that 1 hour, one-on-one with those kids, he can see how someone doesn't know an A from a B, and now they know the language. And so you can see that one-on-one for just a few minutes, those kids just lap it up, having somebody spending that time with them.
bet.
So and I do a lot. I tell that story a lot, and we try to get more and more volunteers into those schools. But if they can just give 1 hour a week to a teacher, especially in these schools, that will make a difference. I mean, I would think you see that too. I mean, he sees it.
No
He
question.
sees how they grow.
Yeah.
And I think if we had more volunteers like that, and maybe through our volunteer department, we can work with them and tell them, all you have to do is sit with that child, let them read to you, let them, and they'll do it for you, for a volunteer, where they won't do it for a parent or a teacher. One-on-one. And I think we really need to work with our volunteer department to because I know I've volunteered and they go, well, what do you want to do? Oh, I don't know. If we can tell them one school, and we can point to these 6 schools. Give us 1 hour a week at these 6 schools. One of them.
And I do know that Lindsay Cantees, heading up that department, obviously is already out there recruiting. And the nice part is they're working in concert with our specialists to go ahead and train them so that they're not intimidated or afraid when they go in there, because, they do know what they're talking about. But it's spending quality time, and we can help focus that. But you're going to hear from the principals as they come up here today. And the one thing that is, I know that they are really proud and they won't boast about, but the culture that they are building at each of those sites, you are not seeing teachers leave. They're attracting some of, as Dr. Boone said, some of the very, very, very best teachers. And I can tell you, they're not leaving. They're not leaving because they believe that their administration and the vision at that school, it's what it's all about. They're going to reach those kids.
Eric?
Yeah, first, Coach Cantees does a wonderful job recruiting volunteers. I just want to say that. But picking back on what Chris just said, is when you go talk to the teachers at the Title I schools, I don't hear them talk about money.
Mm-mm.
They all, without exception, talk about the culture and the environment. And you say, well, why don't you go Lakeview? Why don't you go? And they say, because I get a sense of accomplishment. I get to actually see the light switch go on. With other schools, the parents get to see that happen. I actually get to be there and experience that joy. And so time after time after time again, when I ask the question, it always is environment. I've never had anybody mention to me about dollars, and I say, well, what could we do to change it? They always talk about environment. I've never had anybody. I mean, I'm sure they all want more money, but they're all realists too. But it's all about the culture, and it's all about the environment. And I think that there are things that we've done in the past that cost very little bit of money, but the rate of return on retention is far exceeds the amount of money you invest. So I think that we need to continually look at things globally and supportively at individual schools that help improve the environment and culture of those schools to increase the retention of those teachers. There are plenty of teachers at these schools that have been there for a long period of time. I agree that it is a training ground, they're up and out, but we have a lot of good teachers that stay at those schools and would not want you. You would have to pay them money to get them out of those schools because they just have such a sense of accomplishment and such a thrill. And so I think it just depends on the teacher and what they're looking for. But I think it comes down to what Chris just said: environment and culture. And I think we have some wonderful principals that work hard on that and do a lot of success in that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
And next we have Goshio Elementary.
Goshio and Emma Booker. Yes.
And Emma Booker together. Okay.
They'll be
Stephen Royce, principal of Goshio, and Edwina Oliver, principal of Emma E. Welcome.
When you want to speak, you just need to turn.
There was a couple more pages that they didn't get to. That's good. Come back to them.
All right.
Do they have the? It is. Yep.
Good morning.
Steve Royce, principal of Goshio Elementary, and it's my pleasure to talk to you today. I'm going to talk about last year's FSA and what we're doing differently this year. So first of all, let's take a look at our 2017-2018 FSA summary.
Just waiting for the PowerPoint to come up. One more slide. There we are.
And one more. So when we look at last year, there were a lot of positives. We had the highest proficiency rates in reading, in math, and also had the highest ELA lowest quartile score since the inception of FSA. Our third grade scores actually tied the district for the most growth from the previous year. What hurt us was our decreases in the area of math growth, ELA growth, and science hurt us. And so kind of like Chris said earlier, kind of what happened, which takes us to the next slide. So what impacted our grade? It's kind of interesting and ironic to kind of what we're talking about today. 4th and 5th grade are identified as perhaps our growth grades. Those are primarily where growth comes out of for FSA. I had 10 teachers last year in 4th and 5th grade. Within the course of the year, I had a 30% transition instructionally within those grades. In November, I had a 4th grade teacher who accepted a leadership position at another district. It took us until February to fill that position full-time. In December, I had a 5th grade teacher take another leadership position in another district. At that point, I took a Title I position and moved it into that teaching position to salvage what we could for the remainder of the year. And in February, I had a 4th grade teacher go on leave, which resulted in 2 subs for the remainder of the year through testing season. So when we looked at our results for last year, we really said, okay, what are our issues? Our issues are growth and science. So on the next screen, you'll see the instructional support changes we've made for the upcoming school year. In 3rd grade, our reading recovery teachers are working with our retained 3rd graders, which do count for growth for the upcoming year. Our Title I and office staff personnel, they push into the classrooms to assist with interventions. In 4th grade, we have designated ELA and math interventionists are working with students in the area of growth. Plus, with a long-term vision, we've doubled the science instruction that we have on our specials rotation to help there. In 5th grade, we doubled our science instruction, have a designated ELA interventionist, a math interventionist, a science interventionist, and I have specials pushing into the classrooms to help out. So we have a lot of people going into the rooms at this time. School-wide, because we have the 2nd highest ELL population district-wide, we were able to add an additional ESOL support person this year, so that's helping with language. And we noticed specifically to math, we had issues in the area of fluency, so we added Reflex Math, which is designed to help kids with math fluency. So what does it look like so far this year? So when I look at iReady data, I like to look at it over a period of time. So this takes a look at a 4-year period, which is where the inception of FSA took place. So if you look in the highlighted blue section, you'll see there's K through 5, how we did this year. It's interesting because when we talked last year, I was concerned about the decrease each year in kindergarten proficiency, which you could see previous to 2018, which is the 29, the 19, and the 15. I'm very excited to say because of the implementation of our pilot pre-K program, you can see it's the highest score in the last 4 years. When you look at the year-to-year comparison, that's taking 2018 and comparing it to 2017. It's good to see that in every single grade level we're higher than we were the previous year. And the rank compared to over the last 4 years, what that takes a look at, how does 2018 compare to the previous 4 years? It's good to say that in every grade level, we're the highest we've been in the last 4 years, with the exception of 5th grade. 5th grade is the 2nd highest. It's 1% away from tying for the highest. When we look at math, you can once again look at the 2018 scores, and you can see again that impact of the pre-K program also in the area of math, 8% higher than the previous year. Some really good numbers when you see in the area of 4th grade, where you can see it's a 15% gain from the previous year. That's pretty significant, especially for a growth grade. Our concern is in the area of 3rd grade. You can see we declined from the previous year, and we've put additional interventionists into that area. The rank compared to over the last 4 years is either the highest or the 2nd highest in the case of 3rd grade, which is very encouraging as we go into the school year. So kind of what is the vision, our look forward for Goshen Elementary? The long-term vision is this. We partner with Partners in Play, which is 40 Carrots, and 40 Carrots works with children birth to age 5. They meet with our families at least once a week in our media center and identify positive play. They really say, this is how you read with kids, this is how you talk with kids, this is the beginning of education for children. Those students then transition into our pilot pre-K programs, where they get high-quality education, which helps, and you can already see the results that we're seeing in kindergarten. What's awesome is those pilot pre-K students then transition into the Summer Learning Academy. So they go pilot pre-K, summer learning, kindergarten, summer learning, 1st grade, summer learning, and takes us to 2nd grade. Now, because of the roll-up with Summer Learning Academies, we weren't quite to the 2nd to 3rd grade last year. That's coming this coming summer. So because of that, this past year, we instituted a pilot, which was the Messy pilot, which still kept kids at school between 2nd and 3rd grade. With our older kids, it's about keeping kids engaged in school. So 3rd through 5th grade, all students attend a college somewhere within the community. those universities speak with our children and say, this is what you need to get in school, this is the impact of having an education, this is the salaries you're looking at, it makes them engaging. It's one thing to talk about kids going to college, but actually getting them on the grounds is a powerful example for kids. The other issue that we have is, how do kids get to college? We have an incredible partnership with Two Steps Further Foundation, which takes iReady data, converts it into a mathematical formula, and then students receive up to $75 a month that's deposited into a 529 college saving plans for kids. So when they leave Goshio, they have the opportunity to have money for college. So overall, we're very positive about where we are as a school. I want to thank the board, superintendent, and the community for their support at Goshio. Things are very positive, and we're optimistic as to where we're headed. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I look at these numbers on page 9 where you're showing what it was last year and what it is this year. But whereby you look at what your kindergarten scored last year versus what your kindergarten scored this year, and it went from 15 to 21 in the ELA. But I look at what the kindergartners did last year versus what the kindergartners did this year, and that went from 15 to 15. Because, I mean, isn't that more comparing the same kids rather than the same, but I know the tests are different. But, I mean, I think if you had a group of very bright kindergartners, you're going to have a group of very bright first graders and first grade and second. I mean.
So your question is...
Do you look at that?
And so if you look at the trend data for the last 4 years, you'll notice that gap between kindergarten and first grade. And it's something that we've actually talked with iReady about, and they've told us we can't measure that way, because what happened at the end of each year, we're seeing our kindergarten teachers were celebrating our results, and then going into the first grade, and we're saying, how in the world does it happen each year we're having this big drop? So we've spoken directly with iReady, and they said, you can't look at it diagonally for those 2 grade levels. So because the measurements are different between kindergarten and first grade. I was, it would be nice if it was a complete vertical alignment across the board, but K and 1 numbers are different. So I agree with you. It's something I've questioned specifically, because you can see the trend data over the last 4 years represents that. So it isn't an equal measure across, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I look at, say, the math proficiency, 4th grade in 2017 was 32. In 5th grade in 18, it was 32 to 42. So, I mean, I would think those kids improved. But to some extent, I would think you have to look diagonally and across and look at the 2 of the numbers together.
And I look at both directions as well. And I agree with you, because you look at that trend. My concern is specifically with K and 1. That's the one example that doesn't align. But with upper grade levels, we do see that alignment. Well,
and the other issue, too, is, are they the same kids, or are you getting new kids in? And I understand that, when I'm looking at the numbers from the private schools and whatnot, the private schools have the kids sometimes in pre-K, and then they might have a program, where they can get vouchers for, kindergarten and first grade, but those numbers drop off. I mean, pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade is where you see a lot of them, and then they kind of drop off so I don't know if you're seeing an uptick of kids in 3rd grade that you hadn't seen in kindergarten and first grade that are coming from other schools in the district that aren't our public schools.
We're not seeing
It's kind of hard to track, I know.
We're not seeing an increase at a particular grade at this time. Our 4th and 5th grade are larger than the other grade levels at this time, and I just think that's the way that the demographics have come, and it's been that way throughout the years. So we're not seeing a specific grade level that jumps up.
But 4th and 5th are higher than 3rd?
Currently. Actually, 3rd is the highest, sorry. 4th and 5th are higher. Our lowest grade right now is 2nd. Again, it's just kind of where we are positionally at this point, but 3, 4, and 5 are higher than 2nd.
I just want to say that you and I did a most unscientific poll anybody could ever do, right?
Sure.
But it did show that the pre-K was working. I mean, it was pretty startling what our very unscientific poll showed. So I just want to point that out. But my question is, what do you need from us? I know Chris and Laura are doing great things, but what is it you're like, man, I can't get through to them, I need this. What is it that you need?
For us right now, it's about time, and so for us to be able to implement what we're doing, it takes time, and so with the district has been very supportive in regard to staff. Adding the additional instructional person for ELA has been very helpful. And again, our teachers continue to grow and develop, and so I think we're stronger than last year. So at this point, looking specifically for another program, that isn't us. So we want to continue to develop and get stronger with what we're doing. And I think, I'm excited to see where we are at the end of the year.
So you don't want us to come up with another program next year to help?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Well, talking about the population of our students, and that's always intrigued me because, where are students coming from, meaning have they been in private school or have they been in other public schools even? And then where do they go when they leave us? I think at some point in time, I know we're not doing all the job we could do with analytics, but I think at some point in time it would be very helpful to us. It was one of the things I was hoping Watson would have helped us with, but I guess we don't have Watson anymore. But I think it would behoove us at some point in time to see where our students are coming from. Edwina, for example, if you have a student coming in from second grade, where was that student educated in kindergarten and first grade? I think that is a really important focus for us. And then where does that student go out of elementary and into middle school? And then maybe they go to a charter school and then come back into our high schools. I think all those things are really important for us at some point in time. And I think that would be helpful for us as well to look at. But good job, and I like what I see happening at Goshio, and appreciate your being here today.
I have a question on that point. I know we're seeing more transitions with school choice across the board. And I don't know if from our aspect, from a macro standpoint, I think Jane brings up a good point. I know we are contracted with this company, but that is doing some tracking, but I think that's post-secondary. It's not focused on post-secondary, but from an educational standpoint, I presume, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's helpful for the instructional side to know where those children are coming from in general at the beginning of the year. So I know we do assessments to kind of get a sense of, with iReady, where they're at. Do we have the opportunity to ask? I mean, I know from VPK programs, that was something we were in kindergarten, we were always trying to gather, did they have VPK beforehand or not? We've kind of gotten better at that. So can you talk to us about how we're able to do that?
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to make you aware of some of the data elements that we have. One is a migration report for every school in the district by grade level. We can tell you how many students reside within the boundary of that school that are attending that school. We can tell you by numbers what other school they chose to attend. So we can say there's 100 kids that are in kindergarten in Goshio, and 80 of them are at Goshio, and then we can tell you where the other 20 very specifically are at, and we can do that by grade level. The opposite is also true. If there are students attending a school from outside of the attendance zone, we can tell you exactly where they came from, what other schools, and so we can track migratory patterns.
Okay.
The other thing that we have, and to kind of piggyback on Jane's point, is one of the things that we can do, and I've challenged our RAE folks to do, is when we look at key elements like reading on grade level at the end of third grade, it's one thing to judge a school based on their third grade population. It's another thing to judge them based on the kids that they had 4 years to work with. The kids that started at your school in kindergarten, that tested with you in third grade, we know those students because they've been with us and are at that school.
Right.
And so it won't answer the question of those that move in and move out, but we can compare all students tested in third grade versus the students who were at that school since kindergarten. And those are numbers that we're working on generating, sharing with our principals, and I'd be happy to share here and brainstorm is that, and we can do that for key indicators like not only were they at that school since kindergarten, but were they at a Sarasota County school since kindergarten, or did they come to us from somewhere else? And so we can break those at key points into really 3 classes: at their school, within our district, or a combination of multiple school districts. To me, that's the only fair way to judge the impact of a school. It's one thing to tell Edwina, I want all your kids to be reading on grade level by the end of third grade, but if I only give her a year to do so, that's different than giving her 4 years to do so. And in Stephen's case, 5, is that we're tracking those students. One of the data elements that we've insisted from the start with our 4-year-old program is not just tracking their academics, but what percentage of them are. And so we were happy that all of our pre-K students returned for kindergarten.
Right.
But we're going to know as that pilot grows, one of the things we're tracking is the migration of those students also.
And that would, and that, well, I think from our end, I think that'd be helpful. But my question from the instructional side, does that also help you guys? as well.
It does, and when we look at the pre-K data specifically, which is what we just pulled off from that trend data, so that when those 18 students went to kindergarten, so there's 18, we have about 100 kindergartens, 61% of the class moved into that advanced work. So as we have the kids over the years, that's much better. The more stable we are,
Continuity, yeah.
we can be able to teach kids. That's why we're really excited about having the 2 classes now with the 36 coming in. We're going to kind of even transition what kindergarten looks like next year because of the fact we want to continue to push them up. So the longer that we have a student, the better it is, because they're more in our system and being able to educate better.
Good. That's great. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions? Anyone?
Good morning, school board members and Superintendent Bowden. I'm Edwina Oliver, the proud principal at M.E. Booker, and I want to start with what we say every day, our mantra, what we stand on, every child, every day, whatever it takes, and then some. And at Emma, it is the then some that gets us the results that we need and what we go in every day talking about. I strategically put our mission statement as a second slide because it really speaks to the work that we do over at Emma E. Booker, and that's been going on prior to me even arriving there. But we have a no-fault approach. We really do need the support of our parents and community members and our teachers and our staff to meet our children where they are developmentally and bring them where we need them to go. So if you enter into the school of Emma E. Booker, you will see on the wall High Expectations for All, which is right underneath the founder, what the school is named after, Miss Emma Edwina Booker. So we stand on our mission statement. It is something that is embedded in my teachers, and I'm bringing it forward to them every day at school because I want them to remember the purposes and why we are here in the starting of Emma E. Booker. So on the next slide, our theme this year talks about our game plan for success, and we had to start with our playbook that we had from last year. And on that, you will see some of the plus and the deltas that are listed. While we are celebrating and very proud of the ELA learning gains in our lowest 25%, we were the highest among all elementary schools. We went up by 1 percentage point. We take all of our gains at ME Booker and we celebrate our successes. We went up in science in 5th grade. 43 to 47% of our students are now proficient in science. In math, we went up a percentage point for our 3rd graders. Again, we're celebrating our successes. And for ELA, we are celebrating that success because it was one of the grade levels where we had 2 teachers who had resigned prior to November. And so we had that grade level with 2 subs in, and we did some recreating. We kept the plan in place where they were departmentalized, but by December we had to go to self-contained where each teacher was teaching their all subjects with the exception of 2. We left our advanced work class and another class separate for them to departmentalize. So we celebrated that after all of that change that went through for those students that we remained the same in that growth in the area where we are for ELA. Now our areas of concern, and I will say which we are addressing on our school improvement plan this year, deal with grade 3 through 5 proficiency. If you can look at the slide and you will see ELA and math, we took a drop in both of those core areas. Our learning gains, we took dips in that, especially in our math. And our lowest 25 in our math, again, we took another dip. Those are all areas of a concern. And those testing area grades, as I will speak to a little bit later, those were also staffing changes where we had staff members that we had to have substitutes in to get us through this year. And they're not excuses at all, but they are factors that will contribute to where we are right now in the work that we still have yet to do at MAE. On the next slide, you will see our I-Ready comparison. And even as we were putting this together, these are the facts of where we are, where our students, where we're meeting them where they are when they come into our school. And proficiency for students being on grade level based on the I-Ready data from 2017, 2018 AP1 to this current AP1 that we just finished. And you will see across where we are with grade 3. Last year, they were 31% of the kids that were on grade level for ELA, where this year they were 28%. So there was a slight decrease in that. Grade 4, although we went up, we were 14% last year during this time. This year we are at 24%. And grade 5, Still, we took a decrease, but we're right in alignment to where we were last year. Our math percentage of students on grade level across, if you will see at grade 3, which is a grade of concern for us this year, our students are at the exact same, and this is a different group of students, so it's comparing apples to oranges. There are a different group of students at the same grade level. We're still 10% of our students, and we have 93 students in grade 3 this year. 10% of them are on grade level according to our iReady data. Grade 4, we, again, for ELA and math, you see that it is looking good for us in grade 4 because those grade levels have went up based on AP 1 and 2. AP 1 from last year and this year, and then grade 5. Still, it's a slight decrease, but we're still right in that ballpark of where we were last year. And so I have to say we still have high expectations for all. Although those scores are well below where we want to be, we know that these are the cards that we've been dealt, and we're going to play the hand that we have, and we're going to score big and make the changes that we need to make at Emma. On the next slide, we talked about the contributing factors, and I just have to put them out there. We had a new principal. I am new to Emma, returning as an administrator, but by far I've been a teacher there before. And so I knew the elements of Emma. I've been there for 3 years, and I've been at all of the Booker Nation schools. So that was a positive factor for me to go right in. I felt right back at home. However, we had 8 new teachers and 9 new classified staff members. So that's a total of 17 new staff members that we had at Emma last year. Within that, we had 4 teachers that resigned between November and December in grades 3 through 4, which are our testing grades, as well as an ESE position. Out of those resignations, 1 teacher was on the Improving Assistance Program. She resigned in November, and then 2 other teachers resigned in lieu of receiving the Improvement Assistance Program in November and December. And 1 teacher received a leadership position in a private school in Manatee County, and she was our ESE teacher. One of the things we also struggled with was difficulty in finding the right long-term sub. So in 4th grade, we went through 2 to 3, almost 4 subs until we landed on the right sub to finish out the year. With that, and we did have academic intervention support with 2 Title I teachers that whenever we didn't have a sub, that teacher was going in to provide the instruction, and our teacher even provided the lesson plans for the substitutes. We were just trying to find the right people to be at Emma to provide the consistency and the continuity with what the directions we were giving them. Again, I say every child, every day, whatever it takes, and then some. Going on to our last one, this is our plan, our action plan, our playbook for this year. We are in collaboration with our elementary program specialists, with ELA and math support. We so appreciate that, them coming in and providing that extra person to us, that we actually share. Steve and I share a go show. So we have that one person that we've already set the schedule when they will support our teachers. And the teachers at MA Booker are embracing that. They want the support in helping us to unpack those standards to continue to make the progress that we need in ELA as well as math. We're continuing to progress monitoring our lowest 25 with the support of contracted teachers, as well as our Title I teachers that are provided with those funds, as well as other support staff that we have at Emma. Strategic tutoring after results from AP 1, which is in place now. We're actually looking at our data, pulling back the layers, trying to figure out where do we go to get all of our kids who are in the bottom quartile, the district quartile, as well as our school bottom quartile. We're going to continue with our Power Hour, which is our intervention block school-wide at the top of the hour. But this year we've embedded top score writing, which was something that our new assistant principal brought to us, and it's been phenomenal with our teachers. We are implementing LLI along with our SRA that we're continuing with K through 2nd, but we still have some kids that are in grades 3, 4, and 5 that are still struggling with phonics and decoding. And as you know, when they take that test in May, that test is on grade level. So we have to continue to bridge the gap to meet our kids where they are instructionally, as well as moving them where they need to be academically for preparing for this test. Implementation of level literacy, I've mentioned before, for grades 3 through 5 during our power hour. That is happening. Also, we do have the support of our reading recovery teachers that are helping us with our third grade students, our retained students. They're pushing in to the classrooms as well. We have 2 of those. And then we're also using a different type of research base to progress monitor our tier 2 students. We implemented using DIBELS to help us identify those kids that we know are struggling. Oftentimes FSA gives us that they're below grade level, but they don't give you the instructional level on where to meet the kids. And so we need to start with the instructional level so we can provide intervention support at that instructional level while still exposing them to grade level content during their ELA and math time. Also implementing a coding course with the support of Booker High School. Dr. Shelley and I, we are working with that STEM robotic, her engineering department, and so they've already purchased robots for us, and we've added this on the wheel as well because we want to expose our children to whatever's out there that will keep them interested in reading, math, writing, and science in an interactive way. So we've added that this year with the support of our Title I funds on our specials for students in K through 5. Again, every child, every day, whatever it takes, and then some. And on the last slide, the resources. I say training and practice because these are all the things that we are continuing at Emma E. Booker. We have the LLI. We're using the support of our ELA program specialists and our math. We're unpacking standards with our teachers. We're increasing our assessments of what we are looking at our students and how they're doing before AP1 comes and before FSA. So we're constantly looking at that data. Our teachers requested this. They really enjoy and feel the impact of thinking maps. And so many of my teachers who are still there from years past understand thinking maps, but when you have new staff, you have to keep them trained or get them trained on some things that work for students that have been found to be successful. So in collaboration with Brentwood, he has a trainer, Mr. Wida, and that teacher will be over at Emma on professional day training our teachers on thinking maps for 2 hours on our professional development day. We'll continue with the support of iReady. Having them to come into our CPTs has been profound. Our teachers are asking questions that they probably would not ask if they were just by themselves. They come with their laptops, they're looking at the data, showing how to formulate the groups. Just because a child's in Profile 1 doesn't mean every child needs the same thing in Profile 1. And so that has been awesome, and our teachers look forward to that. Even though it's during their planning time, they are right in it with us there at Emma with it. And then we're going to continue on with our high expect teaching with the John Sapphire. I honestly believe it's nothing new. It's just telling us what has worked in the past, giving those words and those phrases that make kids believe in themselves and that remind us that our attitude really does determine our altitude, even as teachers in front of our students. And I think I've covered everything on there. With our champs, we are doing our emotional support. We're continuing with, this is our second year in full implementation with champs, and one of the things that we do is, yes, our students are coming to us with different social and emotional needs, but that we cannot make that an excuse. We have to continue to meet them where they are to take them where we need them to go. So we, with the support of the school board sponsoring one of our mental health counselors, as well as Community Foundation, those two have been vital into our school with our support of our 2 counselors and our own homeschool liaison. We are trying to do all the wraparound services to make sure that our parents have what they need to give to our children, so that when they come to school, it makes our job a little easier to move our kids where they need to go.
Jane.
This is a question for both Stephen and Edwina. What are we doing with retention? Are we retaining a lot of students every year? I know there's third grade retention that we talk about if they're not ready to go into fourth grade. Are we retaining many students?
I can speak at Emma. We're not having a lot of retention across the board. We're really looking at the support and levels. Does retention really help with certain students? You have to look at each child individually. So we have retention meetings every year, and we look at the data. We get observations from the teacher. We really look at the data and how they're progressing. Will another year being back in kindergarten really prepare them, especially with a second grader? When you're looking at a second grader and retaining them in second grade, even though they're far below with reading and or math, you know that in third grade, if they don't pass that FSA, they're going to be retained again. And then it looks to our parents and our children, it's a double whammy. Right. So I only had 12 students at Emma that we retained based on the FSA last year. And out of those 12, 11 did return back to me at Emma. One is at a different school. I believe they may have even went charter. But I'm sure they went charter because they're not at another public school, because we track that. So I only had 11 out of the 12 that were retained in third grade that came back to Emma that were our babies. And in second grade, I think I might have had maybe one that we retained last year. In the kindergarten, we only had one.
So for Baltimore Public Schools did a study and said at what grade level should students be retained, and the answer was third. And so, which is counterproductive, kind of what we've heard over the years. So what we really do is we view it as a K-3 model. So kindergarten through third grade is our chance to get it right.
Right.
The concern is we don't want a student going into third grade with a previous retention, because it really sets them up to be double retainee and really, reduces their chances of graduating high school.
Interesting. Shirley.
I'm very impressed. Good job.
Thank you.
But I think you also have, you talk about some of those wraparound services, from what I've seen working with students and parents, that sometimes it's the parents. I mean, it's not so much the students, but the parents really, this is something somebody gave an excuse for their first grader not getting to school. Well, education really wasn't her mom's belly work either, didn't care much about it. And I'm like, this kid is in first grade. So, I mean, I would think, dealing with generational poverty, you're talking about kids who didn't graduate high school, and maybe even grandma didn't graduate high school. How to, A, encourage them to, and B, that they've got to have trouble helping with the homework and all of those kinds of things. Are those wraparound services doing things to help parents understand, this is the way to break the cycle, to help your kids?
I'm going to say that yes, it is. In general, it is. The wraparound service is really helping them with the parental skills that they need so that students do arrive to school on time, that they do see an importance of laying out somewhere in the house a place for them to do homework if they're not a part of the after-school program, or even when they get home. How to have them, encouraging them to read to them every night and just to practice math fluency facts with them. So I would say, yes, they are doing that. They're helping them in that sense. But where we meet them at the school is, even in our family engagement nights, we say families because we're not dealing with parents all the time at Emma. We deal with great-grandmothers, aunts, uncles, and foster parents. And we want to make sure that we provide that inviting atmosphere for them so they will feel empowered when they come to school. So we're very strategic on how we offer the assistance to our parents, but we provide what homework will look like at third grade. Here are some test items that your students will be tested on. And I'm proud to say over the year that our parent involvement has gotten better. We're packing our house when it comes to open house. We're having them ask more questions. They're getting more comfortable. We just had one parent to say to us at open house, when we were talking about an after-school program, she honestly said, how do I help my child? I am not a high school graduate. And I can't, sometimes I feel like I can't help her with her second grade homework because how I was taught or at that grade level, things look very different now. And so she talked about can I enroll myself in a GED program, which we have, thanks to STC on campus, that our parents are able to go to. I said, yes, you can. Even we're trying to find a teacher to even tutor that parent to help them with their high school diploma. So you did mention about the 2-gen approach. We do. We service students and we're servicing our families all at one time.
And I know there's other programs up at the Boys and Girls Club and the Anderson. They have programs for after-school tutoring and homework for the students, too.
For the students, the 21st century, we house at our school, which is a free base program for every student in grades 2 through 5. And then across the street from us, the Newtown Estates, they house another proponent of Boys and Girls Club, and they are able to take more kids across the street. And then YMCA partners with us for Operation Graduation to service our kindergarten and first graders.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Caroline. Oh, Caroline.
I think you've done amazingly well, especially when I look at your stats. You're a new principal.
Yes, ma'am.
You've had 8 new teachers and 9 classified staff.
Yes, ma'am.
That's a lot of turnover in a school. That that has to have been a major impact on the teaching and learning in your school.
Yes.
So I look forward to seeing what happens next year, and hopefully none of the teachers will be leaving, and you'll have a steady staff, and you'll do much better next year.
I think.
It is a concern, though. It really is a concern. It just seems like year after year we put more and more resources, or we try and put more and more resources into raising that low proficiency scale, and we have not been able to do it. I mean, it's, as a board, for me, as a board member, it's very frustrating. It's like, I know it's not just throwing money. It really isn't. But what is it? And I think it's maintaining a stable staff. So I think we have to do more with embracing our teachers and our staff and making them feel part of a community so that they will stay. And it's a tough.
It is tough.
Well, and I just wanted to comment on that. Again, we talk about the achievement gap all the time, and it's, you look specifically at these 6 schools, and Emma and Goshio sitting here today, there really is about an opportunity gap. It's about making sure that they have equitable opportunities. And so you embracing the 2-gen, the summer learning academies, the pre-K pilot, I mean, those are things that are absolutely building capacity, not only for our teachers, but our kids, so that we can go ahead and have a more stable environment at the school and have those kids and families buy into the school so that, again, we're not losing traction year after year. So, again, kudos to all of you for supporting those programs.
Jane?
I know the SOAR program in Newtown also takes care of after school. I've been very involved with SOAR over the years, and they're building a new business and building, and I think that's really a great thing too. And I know that we really have to work hard with the families, because it's poverty, and it's something that we can change if we work hard. But it's not going to take 1 year to fix this. But is the staff stabilized now?
We are. I was just sharing, we were talking, we have about 562 students, but this year, right now, I hired 12 new teachers this year, 12 new staff members, and we've only had one that has resigned, and that happened 5 weeks in. But I was able to find a wonderful substitute. Right now, I was at school interviewing this morning at 7:30. We had about 6 candidates that we interviewed for this particular position. But right now we do have a substitute in, and we just had one teacher who took a leave of absence. One of our ESC teachers took a leave of absence. But I do have a substitute who's been at Emma, who embraces every classroom. I think he's been at 3rd grade, 4th grade last year. He's most requested sub. He's into our ESC classroom that houses our K through 2nd grade students in a self-contained model. So I do have that, and that leave of absence just came unexpectedly. And the teacher is anticipating to be back in August. So right now I do have that sub in that classroom, and with the option of hiring right now. But right now I'm sticking with the subs right now, because the one thing I do not want to do ever at Emma, and I do not want to settle just for a body to be in front of my students. I need someone that's invested and wants to do the work, because there is work to do at Emma, and we don't make excuses for that work. Neither will my teachers. We are, like I said, the cards that we are dealt, we play them. Our goal is to always have a winning hand at every year.
Thank you.
I just really, and I don't want to rush this because I think it's such an important topic. And first, I want to say thank you, and I really appreciate your starting of saying we don't take excuses. We understand we're going to have everything thrown at us, and then some is the part that I want to focus on. And so, I said kind of gas because I thought Jane and I were saying the same thing, but actually mine was on the retention of teachers and the stability being so critical, especially if you do look at your population and what they're dealing with on the external variables. And so you had hit the nail on the head on creating that stable environment in there. And so for me, my question is, this is $1 million question, and I appreciate what you just said, is I'm not just going to have a warm body in there, because that to me is another kind of letdown to some of these students who may not have that stability outside those walls. So what can I mean, from the most, and it doesn't have to be answered today, but I think from what I hear from the board, and I know that this is conversations we've said before, completely outside the box, what do we need to do to help support any educator, wraparound services, like go beyond it? Because that investment at kindergarten through 5th grade is so much more worth it. I guess we goosebumps because I believe in this so much. So whatever it takes, because that just sends the whole trajectory on beyond that. And whatever that investment looks like, and I mean, to have that turnover, that's got to be incredibly challenging. And so from your vantage point, and I was curious from the 6 schools here, what does the teacher retention look like? Is it all over the place, or is that kind of a common thread?
No, I think especially, when you have new leadership stepping into a school, whether it's the first year or second year, you have a tendency to see some turnover because there's a change in sometimes vision, expectations, etc. But bottom line, as you see those leaders put their footprint on what that school is all about and the high expectations, etc., you start to see that settling down. And I think you're going to hear some of that. I think what we ran into last year, and you'll see it in the contributing factors for most of our presentations today, is we had difficulty, even if you had one person, and they departmentalize in 5th grade, which really counts for a lot of your school grade, not being able to find somebody. So that is more not about that they left, but that they couldn't find somebody. So I think that that's one piece. The other piece that I wanted to mention is those specialists that we were able to hire with those federal dollars. The neat part is not only are they providing direct service and support to those teachers, they're also on those campuses. So when there is transition,
right,
they're filling in that room. They're filling in the room, and that is the best we have. So they're there helping guide that substitute or that new teacher as they come in. So we're not losing any ground when somebody inadvertently has to take a leave of absence or something like that. So
okay, I mean, that's my personal commitment, whatever it takes from us to keep that continuity, because I think that is really fundamental to the breakdown or their success. So
one of the things that we asked for, I believe, before you came, was what is the teacher retention? What is the turnover? So we've asked for numbers on that.
That's been, yeah.
Well, we've asked for numbers.
Yeah, we don't have it though, right?
We will. We will.
She doesn't mean before you got on board. She meant before.
Oh, before I got here, I'm like, we still don't have it.
But before today, not
4 years ago.
before
Okay.
you.
Got it. I understand. Okay. Thank you.
all right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
And
much.
now we're going to bring up Glen Allen and Toledo Blade.
We're still waiting. Got it. Next, Toledo Blade and Glen Allen.
Ladies.
Good morning, or afternoon now. I'm used to starting at 8:30, so.
So first up, we're going to have Jennifer Dulciato, principal of Toledo Blade.
Good afternoon, board members and Superintendent Bowden. I'm Jennifer Dulciato, the principal at Toledo Blade Elementary. Thank you for having me here today to share some of our work. I'm excited to get going with you. So we'll jump right in with the data on our first slide. This year, our school grade slipped to a C by 2 percentage points, and even though our overall grade dropped, there were some areas of increase that we want to celebrate and make note of. Our grades 3 and 4 math proficiency increased and were above the state average, and our science proficiency, although it didn't increase, remained unchanged, even with the staffing issues that you'll hear about momentarily. Some of the areas that had a significant impact in our overall performance were learning for math proficiency, specifically at grade 5, and across the board, grades 3 through 5, our ELA proficiency and learning gains. And you can see the numbers referenced in the slide there. So as we looked at the data and we began to reflect on what factors could have contributed to the decline in our performance over this past year, 2 specific areas became evident, and I think you'll recognize the theme of one being staffing and student behavior. For our staffing components last year, we had an assortment of unique staffing circumstances. Specific to grades 3, 4, and 5, we had 2 new teachers, 1 staff receiving an improvement plan, 2 intermittent medical subs, and 2 long-term subs for maternity leaves, all coupled with the lack of consistent available subs in Northport, which ultimately impacted classroom instruction. The second area we focused on, or we definitely changed from the prior year, was student behavior. There was an increase in overall student behavior concerns. You see the data there listed for calls for support for classroom assistance in the areas of pre-K through 2 and grades 3 through 5. Those are calls requiring attention for students who are disrupting the learning environment. So the majority of those behaviors that did disrupt the learning environment ultimately resulted in time off task and time away from the learning as well. And coupled with that, we did see most of those behaviors were related to a rise in mental health concerns that the parents and the families had shared with us. Everything ranging from trauma to anxiety, depression, or a variety of clinical diagnoses. So ultimately having a significant impact on a student's ability to learn. So as we began to dig a little deeper, we developed our action plan for this year and chunked it out into the areas of concerns. And we look at the areas for ELA, math, the area for science, behavior, and staffing. When you look at our ELA and math plan for this year, we're providing focused professional development, which you've already heard a lot about this morning from Goshio and Emma. And that's targeted to build capacity at our staff because we have had in the past quite a bit of turnover. And so this is helpful to continue to build upon that work for our teachers in grades 3, 4, and 5. We are partnering with Florida Inclusion Network to continue to provide support for teachers in grades 3, 4, and 5 to work with our students who have special needs. And of course, we've been fortunate to have the district support for the ELA grant to use the specialists to help collaborate and plan with our teachers in grades 3, 4, and 5 for our areas of ELA and math. Our teams are doing data reviews twice monthly during their collaborative planning, and that allows a more frequent adjustment to maintain a positive trajectory for growth. So we're more quickly to respond to any deficits that we might be seeing our slides. And probably what we're excited about is going to be the most impactful strategy is the use of our Ready data every morning for every student, 30 minutes of skill-based instruction across our entire campus, not just in 3 through 5, but grades K to 5, where isolated skills are taken from iReady data, and that 30 minutes every morning, everyone on the campus is attending to a group of students to work in small groups. In the area of science, we are implementing a common lesson presentation and a common assessment. We're calling it Wonder Wednesday. And that allows us to have a more systematized data collection and approach to prescriptive planning in the area of science. And in the area of behavior, which was a significant concern last year, we have revised our school positive behavior support plan to focus on perseverance and goal setting and problem solving, and the addition of our mental health support to provide that wraparound service and proactive approach for our families to keep students engaged and in the classroom. And I will say in the area of staffing, I had good fortune this year finally to not have any turnover in grades 3, 4, and 5. So I'm starting with the same staff I had for last year, and we were able to redistribute staff amongst those grade levels based on their outcomes from last year to build on their strengths. So that is a blessing to not be hiring those grade levels, to have that consistency that we're talking about. We were also able to align our ESC experts at grades 1 teacher per grades 2nd through 5th. So they're able to build upon the work and continue to refine strategies for working with our special needs populations, as well as focusing in on our bottom quartile students. And due to this was a surprise this year, but we've had an increase in our ELL population, and we were able and had the good fortune to hire a new ESOL professional who is Russian speaking, and her focus is on grades 3, 4, and 5, and her strength is math. So we've paired her up nicely with 5th grade for our ESOL students. So that was a blessing for us this year. So, and as we look at the next slide, I would like to share our Ready data from the start of this year, AP1. And I know that's been a topic of conversation already from Goshio. We do see an improvement in the beginning point for our cohorts this year. When you look at grades 3, 4, and 5 across the board and ELA, we are starting in a much stronger place, with the exception of grade 4 by a few points. And then when you look at math across the board, we're seeing a readiness level that we're excited about. So, this data is definitely pinpointed for us areas that we need to focus on for interventions and support, but also areas where we need to build and continue to have high expectations for our students. So, and other things of note that are happening at Toledo Blade that we're excited about, and I won't walk through every single one, but they're definitely going to play an impact into our school community, is live and virtual parent trainings. This came out of a recommendation through our SAC committee for parents. We have very little parent involvement, So the parents had suggested if they were able to engage with us virtually, it might be of benefit to them. So we have started to try that. We're similar to your town hall meetings where the parents can chime in. We're starting small. We did a virtual cybersecurity training night, very poorly attended, but nonetheless, it was exciting for us to get that off the ground. And the next step for us is similar to a Khan Academy, which is going to be teaching some math strategies virtually for parents to be able to interact with the staff that way. So they're learning some of those skills to help their students at home. The second thing I'd like to highlight that's we're excited about is our after-school training sessions. Skill-based for students, just like our first 30 minutes in the morning, we're offering that in the afternoon as well. So some students can get a double dose for skill remediation, and hopefully that will help bridge the gap. And as you look at some of the opportunities, expanded arts integration, those experiential learning experiences for our students are so relevant and so helpful to cement the learning and translate that learning for our children. For our gifted students, we have a robotics program that we're working on through a LEGO grant to help mesh together math and science as well for those students. And we expanded our reward and recognition program, which I alluded to recognize not only attendance and achievement behavior, but also effort and improvement. I think that's big for our students to create that stamina and learn how to persevere and to keep moving forward, because that we do see a lot of our students tend to give up when they get frustrated or face challenges. So we're excited for all the changes that we're implementing this year and staying focused. And I think in closing, thank you for your continued support. And our staff does remain committed to our mission, which is every child, every day, whatever it takes, just like Emma. And we're determined to make a difference.
Thank you. Eric?
So I had the privilege of being a custodian at her school. And I have to say, I've never seen so many teachers stay late and be so happy about it in all my life. They had their stuff out in the hallway. They were redoing their classrooms. They were just so happy to be there. It was just so shocking, but it was nice because I didn't have to clean the classroom because they were messing it up. So I was like, great. They were also shocked that I spoke English, so that was interesting too. But it's like deja vu all over again. We keep talking about retention, and in about 10 months ago, we talked about this issue, and we keep hearing from administrators, and we talked about having a voice of the teachers, having the SCTA, who represents the teachers, come to us and tell us what recruitment intention from their perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good to have it from the administrator's perspective, but I think the board was pretty unanimous in wanting to hear from the teacher's perspective of what recruitment and retention issues that we have. Because this is just it's affecting student achievement, clearly. It's affecting student achievement. It's affecting our ability to fulfill the mission of the organization and achieve our goals. And so I'm willing to take input from any avenue where it comes from. I'm willing to take input from the community. I'm willing to take input from the administration, and I'm willing to take input from the teachers. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to follow it. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to implement it. But being open-minded and hear from the line staff, from the actual people who you're talking about, what the issue is. And so I know there's a committee, but I'd like to hear unfiltered from the teachers and their representative what the issues are. And so when is that going to occur?
Well, the committee that you make reference to is co-chaired, and so we appointed Eric Jackson on behalf of the administration. The union appointed Sid Quinn. There's equal representation of both groups. They are being very methodical, but they are working on recommendations. The Bransick Foundation has been kind enough to try to support them with some data analysis. They've done a survey with teachers, got a very high response rate to that survey, so I'm anticipating that we're going to get some very tangible, actionable items out of that group, and I can assure you that it will be unfiltered.
But we allow administrators to come and speak without going through that committee. So I would like to hear from the teachers. I'd like to hear the input from the committee, which is everybody working together, but I'd also like to hear from our teachers what it is that they see the recruitment intention issue is. And the committee, I don't think we should minimize the number of inputs that we get on this issue. I think we should get it from the committee. I think we should get it from the administration, and I think we should get it from the teachers. That's my personal point of view. And I thought in January the board was pretty much unanimous in wanting to hear from a wide variety of sources about recruitment intention, because again, this affects the mission of the organization.
And that is when we sat with SCTA and put that committee in place. I mean, you're welcome to invite anybody you want to a workshop, but I will tell you the survey that is being done with Barancic will get the widest, as opposed to hearing the loudest voices. You'll get a wide input. We're going to have specific recommendations, but if you want to invite SCTA, they're sitting in the back of the room. Invite them to the podium.
Yeah.
Oh.
Caroline.
Thank you.
I'm interested in this. Could you walk me through what your behavioral support plan, what it looks like for a student?
How we readjusted our positive behavior support plan this year.
Through restorative activities. Could you
Yes.
walk me through a child?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. We do have our guidance counselors assigned. They are rotating through classrooms. Every classroom will receive weekly practice through restorative circles with our guidance counselor. So where they are learning some of those strategies to cope with social skills, problem-solving skills, and able to tease out some students that might have needs that are more in-depth that we can refer out to our licensed mental health therapist. So on any given day of the week, the guidance counselor and the teacher will work collectively in the classroom to create a restorative circle where they're working through some challenges that are relevant to the students of that day. And then the teacher continues that practice during the week. So it's an everyday occurrence with the teacher, but once a week with a guidance counselor. That's that first layer of support. And then secondly, that guidance counselor then is able to get a more in-depth feel of the students' challenges that they're facing, so that if there are calls for support or their needs for support, we're able to have that background history and able to work with the students as a whole child approach.
Thank you.
Shirley.
I too was looking at the restorative practices because, I know anytime that there's an increase in the number of suspensions, while it may make it easier for the rest of the class, the student who's suspended isn't getting the learning, and maybe the problems why they're acting up in class happens from at home, and that just makes it worse. So I think the restorative practices that you're doing will help, and maybe in the mental health that you're doing with the children and their families might help a lot. I was telling the superintendent a story about my teacher was trying to do restorative practices and it was one little boy only had one leg, and sat him down and had him try to empathize with the other student and said, well, now let's how would you feel if the shoe was on the other foot? And he looked at her and he said, really? So I'm glad he could take that with a bit of humor. I think that little boy will go far. But you're talking about giving parents training and whatnot. I found greatschools.org. My granddaughter's now a junior in high school, and I signed up when she started in kindergarten, and I'm still getting, I added the other kids to it too, but every day or every week, notices about how to help your third grader who doesn't want to do her homework and things like that. And there's a lot of, I think, good information. I know that Superintendent White didn't want us to put the link on our website because anybody who wants to can post to that, and they can post a negative or positive comment about the school. And she had some concerns about that. But I think the information they share with us, or me as a parent or grandparent, is very helpful. So it's greatschools.org. And, I read them every time they send them to me.
Yes. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt her. We were trying to make sure timing stuff, and I don't want to fast track. No, I don't want to fast track any of the schools. This is too important of a topic, so by all means, apologize.
All right, you're good to go. There you are.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Red light's on? Good.
Red light's on. Okay, well, thank you for having me here today. I'm Becky Drum. I'm the proud Panther principal of Glen Allen and Northport, and I'm excited to share some information about...
Great newsletter.
Oh, thank you. Some information about our school. So we have some highlights that I wanted to share with you today. Overall, our grade 5 math achievement went up 9% last year. Our grade 5 science was up 7%. We also had a 32% reduction in our out-of-school suspensions, down from 22 days to 15, and we had a 20% reduction in the amount of students with chronic absences. And chronic absences are considered 10% or more of the students' time in school. So we did have a significant reduction there. So we're very proud of those achievements. Unfortunately, we did have a few decreases that are listed there for you. Across the board in ELA, 8% down in achievement, 4% in learning gains, and 20% in our lowest quartile. And then overall in math, 3% down in achievement, 2% down in learning gains, and 14% down in our lowest quartile. So what happened at Glen Ellen last year? Possible contributing factors. When we met as a team trying to sort through that data to really determine what happened, a few things that you'll see are common threads with my colleagues as well. First was staffing. In grades 3 through 5, last year we had 6 new teachers just in those grade levels. 3 were in 5th, 2 in 4th, and 1 in 3rd. And then on top of that, we had made some changes within our own staffing on campus, and there were 3 new teachers that had been at Glen Ellen prior, but were new to those tested grades. So that's 9 new teachers to 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade last year at Glen Ellen. We also had 1 teacher take a maternity leave for a portion of the year, a 5th grade teacher. And then we had some staff members that needed some help and were on improvement plans. I had 3 staff members that were on performance improvement plans. I had 1 that was on an internal assistance plan, and I had another that I was starting a plan for and resigned in lieu of the start of that plan. So all of those, the staffing seems to be a kind of a common thread across schools. But 2 other new things that we started last year at Glen Ellen. We moved to a full inclusion service model for our ESE and ESOL populations. So with that change, there's some growing pains that happen there. So we did bring in Florida Inclusion Network to provide training to our staff and to our paras on how to co-teach, how to collaborate together, how to plan in a different way. And we worked with them throughout the year in both our ESE and our ESOL populations. So we're hopeful that the model is a good one, and we're continuing this year, but it was a change, and not really knowing if it could or could not have been a contributing factor. And then also, at the beginning of last year, we've been doing math training as a district for quite a few years. But at the start of last year, we really were looking at how teachers were teaching math and asking them to use the structure of their math block in a different way, asking them to use a number of the day, a problem of the day, number talks. So although they'd been receiving a lot of training, how they were working in that one particular block was different. And so with our district specialist and our school-based math specialist, if you will, we did work through, what that PD needed to look like and how we could support them. So again, we think it's a great use of the math block. It was just a significant change in some of the resources that they were using and the instructional practices that we felt were noteworthy. And also not listed on your slide, just a few positives. The science data that did go up was in result of us adding a science tutoring program and a science boot camp program as a result of disappointing data at AP2 through the science benchmark. So we added that in January to kind of counterbalance that. And then also contributing factors for our attendance and behavior data. We were allocated a new homeschool liaison last school year, and primary roles and responsibilities for her were to monitor attendance and work with our families. So I really feel like that additional staff made that big difference there. And then we did use contracted services dollars to provide additional supplemental support for behavior and guidance, small group instruction, and we were allocated an additional unit of a paraprofessional, a behavior tech aide last school year. And with that additional unit, we could provide additional supervision in classrooms to help keep children in classrooms more often, or to, if they needed to be removed for a short period of time, we had somebody that could sit with them until they were able to rejoin their classroom. So we feel like that additional staffing in those 2 areas was significant in our contributing factors. Moving forward for this year, we have made some changes for our action plan. For ELA and math achievement and learning gains, we are looking to bring an after-school program for reading and math to Glen Ellen. We had success last year with our science program, so we want to build on that in those areas. We're looking to start that in January and go up until about the time when FSA is being given. K-5, we are doing a school-based guided reading program implementation, which I'm very, very excited about. We are trying to move all grade levels forward, not just 3 through 5, and using the literacy experts on our team, which are our reading recovery teachers. We've started in pre-planning, and we're using Jan Richardson's work to implement K-5, this program. And specifically, we're really trying to teach our teachers how to correctly identify the instructional levels of their students, so then they can correctly identify the instructional materials that they need to use, and then beyond that, the instructional strategies that are for that grade level and that level that they can use to move all students forward. So we're also providing that training to all of our instructional paraprofessionals as well, so that when they're working in class, either with ESE students or our ESOL populations that really need additional support, that they have that training as well to help us move forward. We've shifted some roles and responsibilities at Glen Allen of our title teachers to make sure that they're able to provide additional support in classrooms as far as interventions for students, but even more so as support to teachers. Their jobs are hard, they work hard, and sometimes they need someone to come in and model a lesson or to give them coaching and not be part of an evaluation system. So those roles and responsibilities at our school have shifted so that those experts can go in and say, let's plan this lesson together, and then I'm going to teach it so that you can see what that looks like, or we're going to plan it together and then you're going to teach it, and then I can provide feedback, and it's not from an evaluative stance. Right. So that's something that we've shifted some of those roles and responsibilities. And again, with the iReady dashboard changing, we've provided some training through our district specialist, as well as we do have a school-based iReady champion that's well-versed in the program and can provide ongoing support to our teachers. As far as our lowest quartile action plan, we've increased our ESOL inclusion instruction model even a little bit further. So we've prioritized grades 3, 4, and 5 to work with our certified teacher, our liaison, instead of the paras, making sure that she's pushing in for at least 1 hour a day during their reading blocks to help provide additional services to those lowest ESOL students that we have kind of clustered in classes so that we can provide that inclusion service. Our grade 4 and 5 ESE staffing adjustments, our staff members are different based on their outcomes and some staff members' strengths. And then our reading recovery teachers, and one school already mentioned this, beyond working with their 3rd grade students that used to be their reading recovery students, we're having them work with our 3rd grade retention students so that those literacy experts are working with our most struggling 3rd graders. So they're pulling those in small groups. And then also additionally with our lowest quartile, we've pulled FSA data from last year as well as AP1 iReady data from this year, and we're contracting 2 additional staff members to work primarily with that lowest quartile, 1 for reading and 1 for math. They're going to follow our intervention block to provide supplemental services. Most of those students are identified and they're already receiving some sort of inclusion ESE service, but during our intervention block, we wanted to kind of give them a double dose of intervention and extra support. So we're looking at using the resources from the iReady toolkit. School-wide, we were low in vocabulary and phonics, so those are 2 primary focuses all the way through, specifically even phonics in 4th grade, to make sure that we're filling in those gaps for those students. And then for science, we're going to continue the things that we're doing because they were working. And then last but not least, we have a lot of other amazing things happening at Glen Allen, and I would love to invite all of you out anytime that you want, not only to come through classes, but to come see any of these great things. A few things I'll highlight. We have a student council that's got 75 members, and they meet every single week. 2 staff members kind of run that little extracurricular activity. They do elections every year. They meet with Northport County, local government. They do service projects. They help with school-based projects like volunteer appreciation, staff appreciation, and they're just a really good group of kids that, really wants to make a difference, not only at Glen Allen, but I know in the future in Northport. And then also we've been working to build our arts integration program over the last couple of years, and Brian Hirsch, who I know is here, has really worked with our teachers to bring in some arts integration for some of our classrooms in grades 2 through 5. And then this year he called and offered us a specific program called Arts for All, which is for students with disabilities. So we're very excited to be bringing that program to one of our IND classrooms this school year. So.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Shirley, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. A nice presentation. I really like that you're saying that it's a teacher-directed contracted services for the extra, so you're getting that feedback. But your lowest quartile was dropped 20% in ELA and 14% in math, and I'm not asking for it today, but maybe when we look further, who are they? Who is in this lowest quartile? And, what are the things that they have in common? I'm sure you've looked at that already, but, I think that's something that I'd like to know. You're probably looking at that too, as probably all, you are looking at who is in that lowest quartile and what they have in common?
At Glen Allen, when you look at our subgroups, our students with disabilities stands out as the lowest group, and then the next group when you look at subgroups is our multiracial group, more so than ELL population and more so than African American. So those are groups, yes, we have looked at that data.
Oh, sorry. Jane.
And in terms of English language learners, is it Ukrainian and Russian?
Yep, we have Russian, Ukrainian. We also have Spanish. We have about 15 other languages where we have one or two students. So we have Mandarin, we have French Creole. There's another Creole. There's two types of Creole.
Okay.
So we have a variety, but those three, the Russian, Ukrainian,
those three are the biggest.
Are big ones, yes.
Wow. Caroline.
I don't know how to ask this, so I'm going to try a roundabout way.
Not correct.
No. I recognize that you have a variety of nationalities and languages and things like that, and they have their own customs. How well are they, parents, adjusting to coming to the school and being part of the school?
I think that the relationships that those families have with our ESOL staff members really makes the difference, because they meet with them throughout the year for conferences. They go and help translate when they have conferences, so they have a familiar face, someone that they've spoken to. They're at their ELL meetings. So I think the relationship piece that our ESOL liaison and our two paraprofessionals have with those families helps bring them in more often. But I do agree that there are cultural differences that probably limit some of them from either being able to or wanting to participate in some school-based activities.
I know, because I knew a social worker she's retired now, who told me about. It's a really tough problem to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think you're doing really well.
Thank you.
I would add to the question, and I think we saw a trend. I know that there's the staffing component and again, the continuity and stability. And second, I've heard kind of running theme of the behavioral, mental, and social and emotional health being an issue. Would you equate that to being another issue from the lower quartile, or some elements that are really trying to?
Absolutely. I mean, I think behavior is a rising concern. We were very lucky to be one of the schools this year that also received a new mental health therapist, which is something that my staff has been screaming for years.
Right.
Just another guidance counselor would be great, but they're not trained to do that mental therapy. So we're very excited. We have a great one on campus. Her caseload is almost already full with her 20 students, and a lot of them come from referrals from staff members where there are behavioral concerns in the classroom. And then, digging deeper, it's a lot of times family-based as well.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you very much. Jane?
Are you doing any behavioral management system in the classes with I don't know if CHAMPS has been implemented fully. I know that's one of the things that we're using with Tier 1. Are you doing CHAMPS or anything like that?
We are a 7-year CHAMPS school, so we've been doing it.
Know that, did I?
You guys are pros.
Amy Archer brought it to Glen Allen 7 years ago, and we've continued on. So all staff members are trained in CHAMPS. We train our aftercare staff, our cafeteria staff. We've tried to invite bus drivers in and train them. Some years that goes better than others. And then we also train all of our staff and CPI, which is crisis prevention, in the verbal portion of that every year, so that they have even more tools in their tool belt to help de-escalate students and to recognize the signs of students when they come in, and maybe it's not appropriate to ask them for their homework at this particular moment because maybe something happened in the morning. So we really try to work with our staff members to give them the tools that they need to be successful.
And then working restorative strategies or circles in.
We do restorative circles as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Last but certainly not least, we've got Mr. Wida, principal of Brentwood, and Susan Nations, the principal of Wilkinson.
I got my sweater on, so I'm good.
And we're going to go ahead and start with Mr. Wida at Brentwood.
Go ahead. Hi.
Well, let's see. I said good morning here, but it's afternoon. I'm going to stick to my script because I have a habit of telling a lot of stories. And so I said I got to stay to my script, otherwise we'll be here for 90 minutes more. So good afternoon. My name is John Wida. I'm the principal of Brentwood Elementary. Brentwood is a small elementary school tucked in the neighborhood by McIntosh and Weber Road. We are a family school, a little neighborhood school. I'm happy to say that after 60 years, we are finally being remodeled. Our cafeteria will be completed in February. Our media center is almost done. And then over the next year and a half, we will be having each of the main classroom buildings will be remodeled. So we're very excited. We are a Title I school. More than 74% of our student population is on free or reduced lunch. We've always been very, very proud of our staff and our students because as a Title I school for the past 20 years, we have been either an A or a B rated school 90% of the time. So for any Title I school, that's a huge achievement and a great point of pride. But looking at our data, this last school grade was a major shock for us. Probably one of the most disappointing moments in my career. In 2017 school year, we moved from a B to an A. Now, most people saw the school grade. We saw only 2 points. We made that A by only 2 points, and that was not a good cushion. In 2018, we saw a significant drop in several schools, but I think we suffered one of the worst drops. The unfortunate thing for us is we had no cushion. We dropped just enough to miss that B by 1 point. We were 1 point from a B, and that 1 point has had a major impact on us. If you've heard of the book, 212 Degrees, the Extra Degree, you'll understand the importance of that 1 point. Because at 211 degrees, water is hot. At 212 degrees, it boils. And when it boils, you get steam. And with steam, you can power a train. Well, we now understand the impact of that 1 degree. So what were some of the factors that kept us from reaching that boiling point? Last year, we saw a significant rise in behavior. And when I say behavior, I'm talking about children coming to school unable to self-regulate or control themselves. By the age of 5, most children have the ability to handle their emotions and behaviors in accordance to the demands of the situation. Children are coming to school unable to control their emotions, unable to control their thinking, unable to control their behavior, and unable to control their motor actions. Well, now we can't pinpoint an exact cause for this, but we have data that reflects the dramatic rise in the number of children struggling to self-regulate. This past year, we saw a 28% increase in the number of office calls for support. These calls were for severe disruptive behavior. We also noted a 78% increase in the number of students suspended from school. Now, suspension is something I prefer not to do, but it becomes a safety issue, and I have no choice. Now, we had a handful of students in every grade level that was displaying significant dysregulation and were physically aggressive towards other students, adults, or would run away from the supervision. In October, we saw a dramatic rise in office support calls, especially coming from kindergarten. Even with specially designed intervention program for these children, the data shows the number of calls decreased at first, but then again in February spiked. Later, you can see a trend downwards, but that wasn't because the behavior was changing. It was because we put all of the support with those kids, and they're no longer were calling for support. The other issue that we look at is we had 2 major events that occurred in this state, one Irma and another Parkland, and right after that, our behavior had huge spikes. Another factor, this time on the academic side, would be in relationship to iReady data. While we feel Brentwood staff, students, and parents do an exceptional job of implementing iReady, we still were not totally sold on the reliability of the data we were receiving. That, in my mind, was our big downfall. When the data came in from Diagnostic 2, we saw that there was very little significant growth. We felt the data was not a true indicator of what the kids really were doing, and that the constant interruptions, including the hurricane, during that time between those diagnostics played a role in the poor performance. We now see that it was more than that. It should have been a huge red flag because Diagnostic 3 data predicted FSA to the T. We continued our interventions, we continued our tutoring program, we continued everything we did prior, but not to the urgency the data was telling us we needed to react. At Brentwood, we spend a significant amount of time and energy on mindset and mindfulness. Kelly, you can go to the next slide, thanks. Now's the time for us to practice what we preach. It's time for us to look at our mistakes and learn from them. We know that life isn't the hand that you've been dealt, but it's the way you play those cards. So how are we going to play our cards? First, we want to address our lower quartile of students, those not making learning gains. We know that these are our children who struggle the most and need intensive support. These students face so many barriers. It could be nutrition, health, limited vocabulary, a noted lack of effort due to hope, which creates in that fixed mindset. Often their relationships are chaotic, causing insecurities and stress, which can then lead to distress. We're continuing to work with Accountable Talk, in particular Accountable Team Talk. We're trying to teach our students how to talk to each other about their thinking and work in teams and share that thinking, a skill that is so very difficult for so many of our students. We're very excited about closing the ELA literacy gap training the district's about to provide. The support from this district staff is going to have a huge impact on our staff and helping them understand the real rigor of these ELA standards. With the iReady Standards Mastery, this is going to give us a crucial feedback data on the performance the children are making towards proficiency with each standard. Our data also indicates that our students are struggling with phonics, so we're implementing a phonics program called Secret Stories for all K-1-2 classrooms, ensuring a common and consistent Tier 1 program for students. But one of the most important pieces to this is having a staff that can devote time to our struggling students. We're utilizing every adult we can spare to mentor and support our children, both emotionally and academically. We're using iReady data to plan individual prescribed paths for each child to work towards proficiency. Our science scores have always been a point of pride for us. Last year, we fell 4 points. We have developed benchmark assessments to be administered 2 times a year in grades 2-4 to make sure that those standards are being taught. We're revisiting those benchmarks assessments and revising them, focusing on the rigor of those standards if need be. We're also continuing our work on social emotional learning. Our goal is to help our children build that self-efficacy needed to be successful students and adults. We're teaching our children how to manage themselves, understand the perspective of others, and make sound choices about personal and social issues. We are so thankful for the collaboration and wraparound support we are receiving from 40 Carrots in the Florida Center. These counseling services are going to be significant to our families. As a school, we're going to offer our pre-K and our kindergarten families the Mind in the Making training. The Mind in the Making training will support families in providing life skills children need to cope in this multitasking, multimedia modern world. The training focuses on executive functions, the 7 essential life skills every child needs. For struggling students to be successful, we must have a common and consistent expectations. As a staff, we worked this summer, revised our PBIS program, addressing school-wide expectations. We also trained the staff and champs to establish and support expectations for every single activity in the classroom and in common areas. At Brentwood, we're a tight-knit family. We love our kids, we love our families. I have the privilege for working with an exceptional staff, a staff that gives 100% every day, a staff that is so disappointed in the results, but continue to have a growth mindset and push even harder. They make me proud. 20 years of school grades, 90% of those in A or a B, earned by us. This past year, we earned a school grade of a C. It's our school, our score, our responsibility to act. We know that it is time to act. And in our minds, we're very aware, and we've already turned up the heat. The steam's coming.
Thank you. And I would start before I appreciate your honesty. I mean, I know this is tough because I know you feel the weight of the importance of it, and so I don't think that's lost on anyone. So I appreciate
Thank you.
your comments. I don't want to do any questions.
All right. First of all, I'd like to thank you, John, for all your help this last year. And it was eye-opening for me to what goes on in our districts that we're not even aware of. And that is parents using their children as a tool because the father wants them, the mother wants them, nobody wants them, the grandparents want them, and they use our kids. And that is so disrupting to those kids. And I really thank you because you saved a family this year. So you might feel bad right now, but you saved that family this year, and thank you.
Well, I always say behind every data point, there's a story.
Absolutely.
And it's those stories that people need to understand that, I wish it could be as simple as a test.
Right. But it was, and it's not only there, it's in every school. And I'm amazed that parents use their children as pawns. I mean, I grew up pretty hard, but this was beyond me, that what was going on.
You're going to make it difficult because I'll get on my soapbox, and I don't want to do that right
I don't do that because I might join you, and then we'll really have a problem.
Shirley?
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed out that you missed that B by just 1 point, because I know last year we too, as a district, made that A by 2 points, and we're like, ugh. And thankfully, we overcame that. And we're able to take care of it. So that C, I know you've got that in red there, and it does stand out. You've only had 2 in all these years, but I'll come by and see you maybe Thursday.
Okay.
And we'll talk about what I can do.
I don't want to be redundant, but I go back to the behavioral issue, and I know that's something, I know it's been on the top of mind for all of us, but I oftentimes, when I first got on the board, I think I had spoken to a lot of middle school teachers and principals, and they saw it becoming a real issue, and now we're seeing it as early as kindergarten, and it's frightening, and we need to be prepared for it, whatever you guys need. I think the suspension rate is alarming, but you're right, there is a point where it becomes a security and a disruptive issue, but what's that balance between restorative justice and helping our students? They're young kindergarten children. I can't even imagine an infraction that would require suspension, but we're seeing things that are just things that we've never seen before. So again, my statement is whatever we can do to help support that, to me, is paramount to allow you guys
and I think
success.
We need to be aware that it's not behavior as we think of behavior.
Right.
It's children that cannot control themselves, and they don't understand why they're acting the way they're acting.
Exactly.
They just only know this is a way to react to stop whatever's happening around them.
No, you're absolutely right. It's not just a bad child.
Yeah.
It's certain things that they've dealt with, and that's just how they... Trauma, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, or they have learned that the only way they can get the attention of the parents or their caretakers is by acting out, and so that's why they do that. But yeah, I'm glad we're working on that, and even our civility. Kids don't know how to. I mean, when parents and our leaders don't know how to be civil, it's hard to expect our kids to be civil, and we're going to continue working on that too.
So let me talk to that real quick. This all started with us by talking to our kids to self-reflect and what does it mean to be respectful, and we realized they have no clue. When we talked about what does it mean to be safe, they couldn't put that into any kind of words, so we decided we had to teach them what that is because it's not being taught. And so we have spent a lot of quality time teaching the kids how to be respectful and how to take care of other people and themselves, and all those social emotional learning things that are now looked past because we're so focused on the academic, but are clearly interfering with the academics.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and certainly last but not least, so when you heard from last year, and we're talking about STEAM, so what a perfect segue.
Right, I'm thinking that. So last year I shared with you that we reestablished an old mission at Wilkinson, which is working together, building children's futures. And this year we are building on that with our theme of being a mission possible. And we know that with all of us working together that we are going to see some great things. We've already seen some things and we have some things to celebrate. So if you look at the first slide with the data, this shows our story, our data story of the school grade. We were very fortunate at Wilkinson. While our school grade still remains a C, we are up 43 points, one of 5 elementary schools to show an increase overall in the overall score. So we're very proud of that. We do have a little ways to go now, emphasis on a little, and we do have some areas of concerns. If you look at the cells, the individual cells, we made gains in all of the cells, some significant gains that we were very proud of. The lowest 25% making gains in math, up 30 points. We found that to be very exciting and encouraging. Also, our science, our high standards in science going from 38 to 55. The area of concern you'll see highlighted there in red, which is our lowest 25% making gains in ELA. And that is where we're really putting our focus this year, in addition to continuing all of the work that we started last year. I would like to note that one of the pieces that, and this kind of speaks to a question that we had from some of the earlier presentations, last year we had 56 brand new students that were brand new to Wilkinson in grades 3 through 5, and this year we have 38. So that's that is you're educating a child versus a child growing up in your school. That's a very different education and a very different task. So we do know that. When we look at the things that we think may have had negative impact on our situation last year,